Hi, I'm Danielle and welcome to my perfume journal. This video is going to be about finding perfumes secondhand. I am a longtime perfume enthusiast who keeps this hobby on a strict budget, so I often look to the secondhand market to find a good deal. I shop on Mercari, I shop on eBay, Poshmark, and sometimes shop Goodwill. And when I'm shopping secondhand, it's usually for one of three reasons. So the first reason I might shop secondhand is if I'm looking for a vintage perfume. I define vintage as perfumes that are 20 years old or more. Maybe they're in production, maybe they're not anymore. I would not personally call myself a vintage collector or a vintage hunter, but there are specific vintage perfumes that hold a lot of memories and a lot of nostalgia for me, and that's usually what I'm looking for when I'm shopping vintage on the secondhand market. But buying vintage can be kind of risky. Not all perfumes hold up well over time, so I have to be pretty careful about what I'm looking for in a vintage sale and also what I'm willing to spend on a bottle. So the next reason I shop secondhand is because I might be looking for a discontinued perfume. These are fragrances that are not necessarily vintage, but they're no longer in production, and they can be kind of hard to find. One of the things I have found over the years is that discontinued perfumes are often massively jacked up in price on the secondhand market, so I have learned to be really careful and to do my research. There's also a ton of fakes out there, so you do have to be cautious when you're purchasing discontinued perfumes on the secondhand market. So I'll do things like check the seller's history, check their ratings, check their prior sales, maybe even ask a few questions before I make the purchase. And I've also found that it's a really good idea to be very, very patient. My world is definitely not coming to a screeching halt if I do not immediately get that bottle of Midnight Poison. And being really patient has allowed me to find some discontinued treasures at a really good price. Finally, I like to browse around on secondhand sites for perfumes that are still in production, but they're at a retail price or maybe even a discounted price that I'm just not willing to pay. I will happily give someone's pre-loved bottle a new home, and I will often find perfumes from people who are like me. They have used up a good amount of the bottle. Maybe they haven't even hardly used any at all, and they're just ready to move it along, and they're not looking to fleece anybody with their prices, and they just want to declutter. That's where I find really great deals on secondhand sites. So first up in the vintage category is this beautiful bottle of Bijan. This perfume came out in 1986. It was one of my signature scents in the 80s. This is a gorgeous, thick, lush, rich, heady, honeyed white floral sheep. I mean, look at the color of that liquid. So like back in the 80s when perfumes like Poison and Liz Claiborne and Giorgio Beverly Hills were very popular and everyone was wearing them, I'm at the mall trying to find more unusual things that maybe, aren't permeating the halls of my high school. And this was one of the first perfumes that I picked up and found that nobody else had. And I thought, wow, this is so me. I have to have this perfume. And I waited a really long time to find this and all of the other vintages that you'll see in this video. I mean, this perfume, I had a search going for years looking for a vintage bottle of Bijan. And vintages are risky to purchase online because you can't sample them in advance. You don't know if they're going to have gone off. But I took a risk on this one. It was $23. And it did not do me wrong. This bottle is in perfect condition and the perfume still smells amazing. So next we have Safari from Ralph Lauren that came out in 1989. This is one of those perfumes that I did not own in the 80s or 90s, but I always wanted it. This is like sunrise over the Serengeti. It smells like sweet wild grasses that are just baking in the sun. There are definitely some notes that give it that dry green hay-like quality, notes that you often would see in quintessentially 80s perfumes, things like galbanum, marigold, there's hyacinth in this, there's aldehydes for sure, narcissus, rosemary, moss, amber, vetiver. I am definitely not an expert on all the iterations and the batch codes of the Ralph Lauren perfumes, depending on, what company owned the brand at the time. But what I can say is that this perfume smells exactly like I remembered it from the 80s. This is another treasure. Somebody was decluttering it, and I was willing to take the chance on it because it was only $30. And sometimes I keep my vintage searches active to see what the going rate is for some of the perfumes that I've picked up secondhand. And this is not going for $30 anymore, I can tell you that. So I feel very, very fortunate to have this beautiful bottle of Safari in my collection. And finally, in the vintage category, and I cannot even believe that this qualifies as vintage now because it came out in the year 2000, is Michael from Michael Kors. When I tell you that this is the loudest, the strongest, the most obnoxious tuberose perfume on the planet, I am not exaggerating, and I love it for that. I wore this constantly in the mid 2000s, and I wore this to work. I wore this to work. So I would like to genuinely apologize to anyone that may have been in a closed room with me between the years of 2013 and 2016, unless you thought I smelled good, in which case you're welcome. This perfume goes for $200 now on the secondhand market. But patient me, I was able to connect with a lovely seller who was destashing this as a backup bottle that she had, and she sold this to me for $80. And so I have learned that patience with perfume is definitely a virtue, because I never thought I would have this back in my collection again, and I'm so glad I do. I love this perfume. So moving on to discontinued perfumes, this is Blue Silk from Agent Provocateur. I had sampled this in a sample swap with a friend. I really liked it. Like many of their other perfumes, this is a spicy rose, but this one is a little bit more dry. It's aromatic. It has some juniper at the top. It has some vetiver in the base. When I found this bottle, it was a little beat up, but I did not mind that, because when I'm shopping secondhand, I'm just reminded that, somebody else loved this bottle as much as I'm about to love this bottle. But the best thing about this perfume was not the price, which was pretty great. It was $20. The best thing about this perfume is that the person that I bought it from sent it to me in a box of stovetop stuffing. There was no actual stuffing in it, but the perfume was packed in a stovetop stuffing box. And so I had to run and immediately give this seller 5 stars, because I think that anybody who sends perfume in a stovetop stuffing box is awesome. So next is the EDP of L'Ange Noir from Givenchy. I am not 100% positive that this is discontinued. I'm pretty sure that it is. The only version of this that I can find anymore is the EDT. I can't find the EDP anywhere, so I'm thinking it's discontinued, but please correct me if I'm wrong about that. Anyway, I blind bought this secondhand, almost full, $40. I was on a big sesame kick. I was on the hunt for my perfect sesame perfume. And I was expecting that this would be like a nutty sesame on a soft, velvety, creamy base, because it had all the notes that I love, even though we know notes don't tell the whole story. But it had almond, it had iris, it had the sesame note, it had amber. But there's something a little bit sharp about this. Maybe it's the pink pepper note that's at the top. It almost feels soapy, and that to me seems to be at odds with the sesame. So maybe that's why the seller was moving this one along, because it was almost full when I bought it. So it might have been a catch and release for them. But I am not going to write this one off yet, because sometimes perfumes for me are like wearing progressive lenses. When I first got my glasses with progressive lenses in them, it took me a while to get used to them. I was dizzy and nauseous and having a hard time going up and down stairs. But after a while, I got used to them, and something just kind of clicked in my brain one day. And now I cannot imagine wearing anything but progressive lenses. So perfume can be a little bit like that sometimes. You try a perfume, it doesn't work for you. You wear it a few more times, something clicks, and then you love it. So I don't know, maybe L'Ange Noir is going to be my progressive lens of perfume. Okay, I'm ridiculously excited to talk about this perfume, because this is a totally hidden gem of a perfume that I never would have found if it weren't for the fragrance community. This is Temps de Peace from the designer Andree Putman. And one of my perfume pals posted about this a long time ago, and I thought, ooh, that sounds amazing. So I put in a search and I waited. And after a few months, which was not as long as I thought it was going to take to find this, a partial popped up and it was like $50. And that is like way more money than I would normally spend on a partial of this size. But my friend who recommended it is someone whose taste is very much like mine, whose nose I trust. And so I figured, why not? And I went for it, and I am so glad. This is a delicious, powdery, spicy incense with cinnamon, heliotrope, ginger, and benzoin. And all of those spices and warm notes just kind of hug the frankincense. It's kind of weird. It's like the gingerbread man went and hid in an old church or something, and I love that. This is definitely one of the more unusual perfumes in my collection and a real find. So the last 3 perfumes I'll talk about are perfumes I purchased secondhand because I'm just too cheap to pay retail for these. The first one is Amber Musk from Aerin. This is one that I sampled in a swap with a friend, and I thought, yeah, I think I would like to have that one on hand. It's a nice, easy reach. It's a huggy, musky amber perfume. It's exactly what the name suggests. And this was more than half full when I got it. I think this size retails for like $150, and I paid $40 for this. But if I am being honest, now that I have Kenneth Cole White, I prefer that one a whole lot more. So I think I'm going to actually pass this one on to my mom. She has inherited a whole bunch of perfumes from my collection, and I actually think she's going to enjoy this one a lot. So next up is Elixir Essence from Roja Dove. I first sampled this perfume in a very expensive store. I really enjoyed it. It's a musky raspberry rose, a scent profile that I gravitate toward, but I was not about to spend over $300 on a bottle of perfume. So I asked the associate if I could have a sample, and he gave me 2, which was very, very nice of him, and I was very appreciative. And you're going to think I'm super weird for saying this, but there is something extremely synthetic about this perfume that I love. I have been trying to work out what it is because the note listing doesn't really give any hints. So I'm thinking it's some kind of specific synthetic musk blend that he uses to achieve this. It is not like synthetic like plastic. It's, if I had to describe it, I would say it's more like the most expensive polyester fabric that was ever made or something. It's super strange. I've never seen anybody else talk about this weird synthetic smell in this perfume, so maybe it's just me, maybe it's just my nose, but I love it. This was also the first perfume that I ever purchased in a Facebook group, and it goes for about $170 on a discounter site. I paid $100 for this. If I'm being honest, I would probably not spend that much money again for this perfume, but I'm definitely happy to have it in my collection. And finally, dun da da da, this is Elle from YSL. Elle is well known to be very similar in nature to the highly sought after Discontinued Midnight Poison from Dior. They were both released the same year, 2007. They both have 2 of the same perfumers, one of which is Olivier Cresp. The big difference is in the price tag nowadays. Elle is still available on some discount sites for about $100 for this size bottle, whereas Midnight Poison is going for about $500 a bottle nowadays. I would have gladly paid $100 for this perfume. It is gorgeous. It is a super dramatic rose patchouli, although weirdly enough, rose isn't even listed as one of the notes on this, whereas it is in Midnight Poison. I would say that Elle feels very much like the color of its vessel. It feels very hot pink, where Midnight Poison, though very similar, does feel a little bit more navy blue, like the bottle that it comes in. Elle is just maybe a little bit slightlier fruitier. It's a little more fruity, but it's close. It's pretty close. But it's also about $400 cheaper. So I went with Elle. So that was 9 secondhand perfumes that I found over the years with just a little bit of research and a lot of patience. And I can say with certainty that it was worth it. I did a little preparation for this video, and I figured out exactly how much these would have cost me if I had purchased them either retail price or at a discounter site, and then I broke it down. So the Roja would be $170 currently at a discounter site. Elle would be $104 at a discounter site. Amber Musk I have never seen discounted, and this bottle goes for $150. Safari probably would have been about $60 at the time that it was available. Bijan you can get currently for $38. Michael by Michael Kors was about $80 when I purchased it new. The Temps de Piece was a department store perfume. It's a little hard to figure out how much that one cost, but I'm going to estimate around $60. The Givenchy that's no longer available, there's another similar perfume by Givenchy that's available right now. It's $80 at a discounted site. And the Agent Provocateur perfumes are available on discount sites, not this one, but others for $40. So all told, these 9 perfumes would have cost $782, and I paid $433 for all 9 perfumes. I paid an average of $48 per bottle for these 9 bottles that you see that I acquired secondhand. So that is an overview of why I shop secondhand, a handful of the perfumes I've purchased over the years, and I would love to hear from you. Are you a secondhand shopper? Have you found any secondhand treasures? I really love reading and talking to you in the comments, and I thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.